for all to see, the signs we've lost our way. When we jail our heroes and applaud our villains and turn our hearts away. Like a silent choir, too scared to sing the anthem of a braver day. The Ballad of Dr. Bruce Paix.
And there he is. There's the doctor.
And there's the first commenter.
You can hear me okay, brother?
Yep, I got you.
Good to hear, mate. Good to hear. And people will be happy to know whether or not they do still jump on X or not. I've worked out a bit of an issue with X. Apparently, I've got a bit of a notice on StreamYard, which is telling me that there is some compatibility issues with StreamYard and X, and I've actually got to click my little live icon on X and then share the post. So I'm actually just did that. So I am streaming. We are streaming through to X, Bruce. There we go, as well as my Rumble and Cafe Lockdown's Rumble, and everything seems to be going pretty well at the moment, apart from obviously we know that I got burnt off Facebook, but Rumbles are clear. Good to hear. Thanks for Lovely Awakening for letting us know. Over it's there as well. G'day over it's, and g'day, and Dynaval. I don't know if you've seen you the last couple of times, last few weeks, commenting, unless you've just been sitting there in the back rows a bit quieter.
Lurking.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And you've been well, brother? How's your week been?
Yep, all good. I was dressage dadding over the weekend, but got back today and managed to sort of, shove some pieces together and get some sort of show.
Yeah, nice, good stuff. And as you can hear, as people can hear, my voice is coming back. And look, to be honest, we were just talking about that before we jumped on air, Bruce. All through COVID, and that I didn't get anything, like nasty, whatever. I attended a rally with thousands of people, never wore a mask, not jibby-jabbed, interacted with many, many people. Probably 2023 sort of onwards, maybe caught something for 24 hours or 48 hours. But I got to tell you, the last week, it kind of knocked me for six. It did. I've got to be totally honest. But I think, I'm 54 now. Through my life, I've had, a few episodes where I've had something knock me for six for a good week. But it's been a long, long, long time since that's actually happened. But last week, that definitely did come around and knock me around a bit, I've got to tell you.
Let's just review for people how your immune system works. It's a dynamic thing. You've got to exercise it to keep it healthy. And so what normally happens is you're out and about in the world and you get exposed to some new pathogen. Now, likely you've been exposed to something similar in the past, and if the new pathogen is reasonably similar, you probably don't even get sick. You get a subclinical infection. You get an update to your antivirus software, and you're now fully up to date, even though you never got sick. Sometimes that exposure is to something that's sufficiently different that you do get, a bit of a clinical infection, but again, you get an update to your software, and going forward, your immune system is better. And then very less frequently, you get exposed to something that really is very different to what your immune system's already competent with. And in influenza terms, this is called immune drift and immune shift. So the flu virus just drifts a bit, and so you get exposed to it. You either get a subclinical dose or a mild dose, but every now and then the virus doesn't have a drift in its structure; it has a shift. Something major changes, and that's when you're likely to get a significant clinical infection. Now, if we learnt one thing over the last few years, it's that you don't avoid respiratory infections by avoiding them, because you can't avoid them. They're all around you like smoke in a pub. And so all you can do is make your immune system strong so that when you do encounter them, you defeat them. So Don't feel bad, Mark. What you've just done is you've just updated your immune antivirus software to the latest version, and you should be good for a while now.
Exactly. And I've got to say, Bruce, obviously we had 8 weeks of school holidays and had the kids away. They all went back to school in the last few weeks, and they were all picking up all these different little things, and they were actually pretty crook for the last few weeks themselves. And I was doing quite well, blowing the noses and cleaning up after them, and and I was doing quite well. I thought, yeah, no, I'm all right. I've got my immune system's good for me. But anyway, there you go. It goes around. So yes, I've had an upgrade. I feel a ton better. When you come out of something, when you've been crook, you've had a migraine, or you've just been really unwell, and then you start coming good. It's like almost like you're walking on air, walking on the clouds, mate. So it's kind of how it sometimes feels. So good to see everybody cranking in the comments there. So we're definitely blasting through there, and heaps of people on there. There you go. But yeah, I'm on X, so got some people viewing on X by the look of it too. So Bruce, anyway, how about we get onto it now? I'm feeling well. I was just going to share a couple of things with you, Bruce. I'm not sure if you're going to touch any, because remember, like people have got to remember, Bruce and I don't communicate about what Bruce is going to share. So sometimes I do get gazump strikes, and Bruce puts his finger up, and he does the old waggy finger and says, "Mark." So I'm just going to share a couple of things that I felt, just needed a bit of attention. But let's get this show on the road. What did I say? Let's do this, as they say. Is it? Let's do this. What do you reckon? All right. Let's have a look at my old mate in my state. Now, I'm not sure if you've come across this, Bruce, but if it's made the headlines, but this is old mate Mally. Let's have a listen to what old Mally say. If you haven't heard this, I'm pretty sure you probably have, though.
I know where this is going.
To One Nation voters is who's going to feed you and bathe you and wipe your bum when you're 90, right? Because it ain't going to be your kids. Because if I get my way, they're going to be working on submarines with high-paying jobs so they can afford to own their home that has to be built by someone. And who's going to do that work? My message to One Nation.
So there you go. That was Peter Malinauskas, my South Australian state Labor leader, basically saying to any One Nation voter, and let me tell you, the polls are looking pretty good. There's quite a few numbers growing here in South Australia with people getting behind One Nation. There's some pretty solid candidates, even in my own electorate here. Tyler Green, if you happen to be watching today, in my electorate of Mawson, pretty solid candidate, but also the Legislative Council candidates are also pretty solid. But what he's saying there is that who's going to wipe the bums if we're not bringing in these people that are going to do that? I mean, isn't that absolutely a pathetic thing to say? Like, I think the mask is drifting, dropped off this obviously left-leaning, people love this guy, but the mask is falling off under pressure, and you can see, and I reckon this is all because One Nation is actually putting the wind up them. The masks are dropping off these people, Liberal and Labor, because they are genuinely scared. What's your thoughts on that one, Bruce, to get cracking?
We see exactly the same thing was said in support of slavery back in the day in the States. And the saying at that time was, well, if we abolish slavery, who's going to pick the cotton? So this is Peter Malinauskas' racist, who's going to pick the cotton moment, We need the niggers to pick the cotton, okay?
Yep.
So now we need the low-quality migrants with low skill levels and sort of low pay levels. We need them to be the bum wipers, because you Indigenous Australians, you won't be doing that. You're going to be working for the government. And isn't it classic for statists like Malinauskas? He just admits it. He says, I don't want your kids looking after you when you're old. I want them working for the government. I want them building submarines. Now, traditionally, when the government was much smaller, the family was much bigger, the elderly were looked after in the kids' extended homes. They had value. They cooked, they child-minded, they grew stuff in the gardens, they had a value. So the retirement for the elderly was earned by them when they were younger. and they earned it by being decent to their kids. Now, that's all been outsourced now. It doesn't matter whether you're nice to your kids or not. Your job is to work for the state, and your parents can go and get their bums wiped by robots or Filipinos.
Jace, you always come with the clangers, Jace. It was like the cats and dogs where you see them when they've got to wipe their bums. I've got that image in my mind now. Good on you, Jace. Thanks for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well said, Bruce. All right, we'll move on. We'll move on. Here's another one I wanted you to have a look at. You've probably seen it as well. Let's move across to this one here.
There's now a test for Angus Taylor and David Littleproud. Will they put One Nation last on their how to vote cards? That's the question that they have to come up with, because One Nation are surging at the expense of the coalition. They can't just be One Nation light coming up with similar policies to One Nation. They need to be responsible going forward. John Howard always put One Nation last on the how to vote of the Liberal Party. We'll wait and see what decisions Angus Taylor and David Littleproud are prepared to make if, as appears likely, they both run against each other in this by-election.
Well, there you go. That's old mate Albo. There's a couple of things I pick up on there. Like Howard was a globalist anyway. Howard's a dead set globalist. I mean, you only have to look at the actions after Port Arthur and everything else like that. And we've talked about that before. Howard is nothing but a globalist, so I wouldn't want to take anything there. But who can actually get through interviews, listen to the grinding voice of Albo? I mean, does he grind anybody else's gears when he's talking? But anyway, there he is, Bruce. He's saying, the Uni Party is openly saying, let's put One Nation at the bottom. And the other point I wanted to make there is that he's saying that he doesn't want Liberals to be One Nation light. He's actually saying he wants Liberals to be Labor light, because the reason that people are drifting to One Nation is because they're actually seeing that the left communist agenda is failing, and that's why they're jumping on the bandwagon with One Nation. So if Liberals want to get any seat back in the ring again, they absolutely need to do what One Nation's doing. What's your thoughts, Bruce?
Yeah, well, Labor is clearly running scared, and they need to be, because they're cosy duopoly with the Liberals, where they just swap government between them every now and then and nothing really changes. That's now under threat. And if you want to have a look at how preferential voting works, have a look at Topher Field's channel, because he's gone into this a number of times. But the One Nation are now polling ahead of the Liberal National Party in many seats. So what that means is that when preferences are distributed, instead of the question being, where do the One Nation preferences go? The question's going to be, where do the Liberal Party preferences go? And this is going to really bell the cat on whether Angus Taylor is returning to the Liberal roots, the small government Conservative roots, or whether he's just doing more of the same. So first off, we know that Susan Lee has resigned from Parliament, so there'll be a by-election there. Now, at that by-election, One Nation's going to run. And if the Liberals preference Labor ahead of One Nation, that's just proof that they're the one party, because One Nation's policies are much closer to Conservative policies than Labor's are. So have a look at the how to vote cards there, and have a look at the how to vote cards in state or federal elections when they come up. That's going to really tell you whether Angus Taylor's trying to return to his base, or whether it's just going to be more of the same. And Topher Field argues it'll be more of the same. Angus Taylor really voted no different to Susan Lee or anyone else in the Liberal Party previously. And as I mentioned last week, I rang my federal and my state level candidates here where I am. And probably unusually in Australia, both my state MP and my federal MP are nationals. And there aren't many of them, but here in a rural seat in Western Victoria, yep, they've got both. And I said to both of them, this is a turning point in the road here. This is a fork in the road. It's obvious. The Nationals are a minor party. They're a coalition party. They've got to choose whether they stay in coalition with the Liberals and go down with that Titanic, or whether they align instead with One Nation and continue to be relevant to Conservative government. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there, won't it?
Very, very interesting. And let's hear a bit of a recap of that last one from our old mate Alex Antic.
Establishment right, the old guard of the Conservative movement, needs to understand that the playing field has changed. We've seen that all over the West. We've seen it in the United Kingdom with the Nigel Farage reform movement. We've seen it with MAGA in the United States. And we've very recently seen it in Japan with Tsunai Takaishi, who romped it home on the basis of protecting Japanese cultural values, immigration, and having a clear plan for the economy. That is something that needs, there's clearly the public want to hear. Obviously, I've been saying that for a very long time. I think there's a certain arrogance that's got to come out of the right in politics in this country. It's got to throw off the pejorative nature of the term populism. I've never understood that. I mean, the definition of populism is like quite literally speaking on behalf of people at the detriment.
We don't want to do that.
Now, I mean, what business are we in? Like, what business are we in? So my message to the Conservative movement in this country is you need to get your act together. You need to start taking those lessons, and you need to start looking at, by the way, on those numbers, there are those inside the Liberal Party that want to blame me for that. Me, you know, and that would make sense. The person that's widely labelled as being far right and hard right and whatever the pejorative term of the day is responsible for the drift off to the hard right, far right party. Work that one out. Like, work that one out. It's unreal.
Yep, there you go, Alex. That's old mate Alex Antic there. Good senator, but as I said, Alex can say all he wants, and he's got it right there. He's absolutely nailed a few things, but while he's still a part of that Liberal Party, he's part of the problem. He could be far better utilised, moving and joining his mate Corey Bernardi or others, and really working hard, because the Liberal Party's sunk. I can't see any way forward for them, and for someone like Alex Antic to continue to be on there. And I understand it's his values. He's joined the Liberal Party. He still thinks that there's some hope in there. He's seeing out his term with them, which is unfortunate. But there you go.
And, you know, Alex, yep, I agree. Alex is certainly coming from the right place, and he did great work during COVID. But as I've said to him and to others, the Liberal Party as a brand is dead to me. No candidate with Liberal on their placards is going to get my vote ever after how they betrayed us during COVID. And wouldn't it be great to see Alex Antic either swap and become a One Nation senator, either during his term or perhaps at the end of it? Because let's face it, when he's up for election next, the Liberal Party is not going to pre-select him. They're going to give him an unwinnable spot on the ticket because he's not the sort of politician they want. Like, I mean, he said so himself, you know. We don't want populists. We don't want people who actually listen to and reflect the will of the populace. No, we want representatives who do the work of the elites. So, Alex, you're not getting, whenever you're next up for a vote, you either won't be pre-selected by the Liberals or you'll be put in an unwinnable spot on the ticket. And let's face it, is any spot winnable for the Liberals anymore? I heard today that South Australia is looking at a complete wipeout amongst the Liberals next time. Now, that'd be great.
There's 11 seats that they have yet not filled with a candidate.
With a candidate?
One Nation's got people in all 47 seats. There's 11 seats that don't have a candidate yet.
How's our friend Josh Teague? How's he looking in the next election?
Well, let's hope he's irrelevant. He's still running. He's running in his seat. I think it's Hyson or something that he's running in, but I'd like to see him get wiped out as well. But anyway, we'll move along so we can get into your stuff. I had some other stuff that I wanted to share. This is maybe something that's on your list, but let's hear from a good senator. Let's hear from a senator that I'm sure that lots of our viewers might really enjoy listening to.
Tell Pauline Hanson that if she doesn't like how things are here in Australia, then she can really pack her bags and go to the US and continue being best buds with Trump.
There you go. Well, there you go. There's Senator Fatima Payman, a migrant herself, first generation. She was a child when she came to Australia. And she's just told a multi-generational Australian that if she doesn't like it, she can pack her bags and move on. And if my memory serves me right, I thought it was her that sued Pauline Hanson for a very similar comment. Wasn't it Pauline Hanson that said to her, maybe you should move back. If you don't like it, maybe you should move back home. How about that?
Yeah, I hope she said that within the safety of Parliament, not out in public.
Yeah, very, very interesting, that.
And by the way, speaking of Pauline Hanson, again, Topher Fields recently posted and said that she is such a threat to the established order that don't rule out them jailing her again before the election. And remember, Tony Abbott put her in jail way back in the day, early on in her political career. So this has been happening in Europe. Don't be surprised if it happens here. Personally, I doubt they'll dare. I think if they did jail her or prevent her from running in some way, the result would be twofold. One, there would be massive public disorder. And two, I think there would be a landslide swing to the One Nation candidates that did manage to go to the poll.
Yeah, absolutely right. And just lastly, Bruce, this is what strong leadership in a Christian country sounds like.
The mother is a woman, the father is a man, and leave our kids alone. Full stop, end of discussion. We decided we don't need more genders, we need more rangers. Less drag queens and more Chuck Norris. The mother is a woman.
Less drag queens and more Chuck Norris. Good on you, Victor. Bam. There you go. Good on him. That's what a strong Christian country leader looks like. But anyway,
and
on to you.
Isn't it interesting? The parts of the world that are resisting the whole woke/green tide is Central and Eastern Europe, where there are still people alive who remembers what the end game of totalitarian government is. They remember the grey buildings, the secret police, the citizens disappearing in the night, the censorship, the propaganda and the economic decay. They've been there in living memory and they're not going back. It's the West who've prospered and are now burning the furniture of 2 centuries of white Christian Protestant work ethic that don't have the memory of what happens if you go the other way.
Yeah, exactly right. And this is the result of what happens, Bruce. This year is exactly the result. This is Canada, so another Five Eyes nations in Australia. A British Columbia human rights tribunal has ordered former Chilliwack school trustee Barry Neufeld to pay $750,000 for publicly expressing the view that there are only 2 biological genders in statements ruled to be discriminatory and amounting to hate speech. So this is where we're going. This is where we're heading, Bruce, down this very slippery slope.
Well, I support that if he genuinely said there's only 2 genders, because as we know, there's at least 96 genders. What he should have said is there's only 2 sexes and genders be damned. I don't care about genders. That's what he should have said.
Sex is binary. That's probably his intent, but they've definitely taken it out. There we go. Yeah, let's do. What's this? See if let's do more Chuck Norris. Plenty of people still living who recall the reality of a communist. Yeah, exactly as Bruce said. Yep, we ignore their warnings at our own peril, as we are. Yep. No matter how much Peter Malinauskas dresses himself up in this nice little frame of whatever he's trying to be, he's still a socialist in my eyes, and he's aiming to be a totalitarian, dictatorial, authoritative person. Anybody that lives in South Australia, I don't know if you're on here, you can comment as well, but I have definitely seen a shift in him, definitely becoming more dictatorial. And so I think the powers to be are in his ear, and he's on a mission.
Yep. And socialists are just soft communists. It's just the first step on the road to communism. It's an inevitable progression.
Yep. We must resist. Let's do this.
You're saying it's time?
It is.
Episode 96.
I've fluffed enough.
Episode 96.
I got my voice back.
Now, by the way, don't look up in your Wikipedia the definition of a fluffer. So episode 96, homing in on the ton, and I'm brought or my memory is brought to a couple of sort of test cricket near tons. I seem to remember that Shane Warne made a 99 once, for which he was a bit disappointed for not kicking on. And also, if I remember, Ashley Mallett, who was a South Australian off spinner, who was nowhere near the batsman that Shane Warne was. I think he also once got dismissed on 99, and he was like a genuine tail ender. And apparently, he came back into the change rooms, threw his bat in the corner, and said, "That's the last time I slog in the 90s."
It was going for the big hit. It was going for the big six to finish it up into the ton.
Having not been there before or since, I might add. Yeah.
Oh dear.
All righties. EP 96, this week's edition. So what have we got in this week's edition? We start off with updates. The update section's getting pretty busy at the moment. We're going to revisit Riston's Law, the old money goes where it's treated best thing, with news that another billionaire is leaving California rather than let the state steal his money. We got an update on last week's story about the expansion of the boreal forests due to the rising CO2 levels. And apparently some bright sparks said that we should now cut them all down as a CO2 abatement measure. And you might remember last week there was a story about the transgender shooter in, I think, Canada. Well, that's been followed up with another trans shooter, this time in the US. And I'm going to ask the question whether, Houston, do we have a problem? These transgender shootings seem to be spiralling, don't they?
Yes, they are indeed.
Righto, what else have we got? We got Not Easy Being Green, always a popular segment. And we're going to return to the saga of the Snowy 2 development, which you might remember after our story about Florence, the trapped tunnel borer.
Oh, yes, Florence.
And hat tip to a watcher of the show, a Mr. Neugebauer, who sent me this story, because apparently the Snowy 2 project's current estimate of what it's going to cost is up to nearly 40 billion. And you might remember it started at 2 billion back when Prime Minister Turnbull introduced it.
And we've covered it a couple of times in our episodes where we talked about a blowout a couple of times already at the big machine when it got stuck for a little while.
Now, I did some numbers. Remember, this is only one project, one green project, and one that looks like it may never deliver. Even if it only costs us $30 billion, divide that by 30 million Australians, that's $1,000 each that we've kicked into the kitty for that. And of course, look around you. Look at all the windmills, look at all the solar factories. There's $1,000 being pulled out of your pocket, probably on a monthly basis to pay for these boondoggles. Health segment. Measles is on the rise. Dun dun dun. We'll all be killed in our beds apparently.
So it's nasty anti-vaxxers.
Yeah, well, this story actually platforms a doctor saying that he does blame the rise in vaccine hesitancy, and his suggested solution is that he just sits down with the parents and explains to them what the risks of the disease are. Now, question I'm going to ask is, well, that's only a third of the consent process. Does he explain the benefits, and does he explain the alternatives to vaccination?
Well, this is it, yeah. Okay, does he?
Government overreach. We've got the that sad story in outback South Australia where the little toddler, Gus Lamont, has been missing for, I think, best part of 6 months now. Well, apparently they've now arrested one of his grandparents for possessing a silencer for a gun. So I'm going to look at what are silencers and why is it that they are classified as weapons as dangerous as rocket-propelled grenades, machine guns or hand grenades. Because that's the category they fit in. Okay. And finally, Muslim time, we got a story from Bangladesh where apparently a couple of thousand Bangladeshi men have been taken by tigers in recent years, producing a whole crop of tiger widows, not tiger mums apparently, tiger widows. And climate change, wouldn't you know it, is the reason for this.
There, I've Google climate change and
tiger attacks. Yes. Bengal tigers, no less, because Bangladesh, of course, is Bengal tiger country.
Yes, that's right.
So let's kick into the details. So there's our old friend Walter Wriston, the US banker, famous for Wriston's law, which says money goes where it's treated best. Now, he got a run last week in the context of Treasurer Chalmers' threat to double the capital gains tax on investment properties, proposing to increase it from the present 25% to 50%. And we discussed how capital gains taxes are largely fraudulent anyway, because the thing they're using to measure value, the dollar, is dropping in value. It's shrinking. So when you sell an asset that you've owned for a while, you get more dollars for it, not necessarily because it's increased in value, and if it has, good for you, but because the measuring instrument, the dollars, got smaller. So capital gains taxes are a fraud anyway. But Treasurer Chalmers, he wants actually half of that fraudulent increase in value instead of the 25% that he's getting now. We noted also how the media and the government were dishonestly portraying this as a removal of a discount. So the existing capital gains tax is 25% if you've held the asset for more than a year, or 50% if you've held it for less than a year. And that's the lesser rate further into the future, is to at least partly compensate you for that fact that inflation is muddying the waters on the true value of the thing. But the government and the media dishonestly said not Treasurer Chalmers wants to double the capital gains tax, which is what it is. They said instead that he was looking at removing the discount. So they portrayed it in a much different way to what it really was. Now, the point of this with Wriston's law is money goes where it's treated best. So if he actually does double the capital gains tax on investment properties, then a lot of investors are not going to invest in that sector anymore. They're going to pull their money out, and more importantly, they're not going to build new projects. And so this was portrayed as a way to bring down the cost of housing, but in fact, it's going to increase the cost of housing because it's going to reduce the supply, because investors aren't going to put their money into rental properties. Now, worse than that, because of the Wriston's law, the money that comes out of those investment properties is going to go into some other form of investment. So it might be the share market, it might be your superannuation, it might be precious metals, it might be Bitcoin. It's going to go somewhere else. And what this means is that removal of the discount is going to have to apply to all other forms of investment as well. Otherwise, the money will just flee out of the housing sector. So you can already read that if the government does introduce this, it's not going to be confined to the housing sector, despite them saying that that's where it needs to go because that'll bring housing prices down. So the money will go into another form of investment unless the government across the board increases the taxes on every form of investment, which obviously they will do, they'll have to do. Now, the other thing with Wriston's law is that money can simply leave altogether. It might not just switch into another investment class, it might leave the state or the country. And we said last week that, this has happened in California, where they looked at introducing a 5% one-off billionaire wealth tax. So a temporary government measure, and we all know about temporary measures. So this is flagged as coming in the near future in California. And so as a result, one of the Californian billionaires, Mark Zuckerberg, is up and left. And he says he's left in order to avoid that tax. So he's a perfect example of Riston's law in action. And this week there's another one from California because Steven Spielberg, who's worth $7 billion, he's leaving as well for exactly the same reason. So between them, Spielberg and Zuckerberg alone are worth about 12 or 13 billion dollars. So California thought they could take 5% of that off them. So what's that, about I think it's about 700 million. But in fact, they're going to get nothing because they're going to go. So not only are they not going to collect this wealth tax that they thought they were going to collect, but all the other taxes that Spielberg and Zuckerberg were paying, they're going to flee the state as well. So this is a great example of what happens when governments try and steal too much of your money. The more they try and steal, the more effort people put in not having their stuff stolen.
That's exactly right. And didn't Elon Musk do the same? Which state was it? Did he go to? He went to Texas, but where did he come from?
I think he went from California to Texas, and he took Tesla with him.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
So one of the world's largest manufacturing concerns left.
Yep.
And wouldn't it be good if we had that here in Australia, where state taxes were different in different places, such that you could just choose a low tax place?
Might get to that stage.
Well, we can't have it because states are funded by GST, which is collected federally. It's one rate across the board. So we don't have that option in Australia.
No, we don't. Well, we might have to make some changes down the track, Bruce. It might end up changing once the revolution, the peaceful revolution's finished. We might see something totally different.
Yeah. In the meantime, hide your stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Or move it somewhere where they can't bloody grab it.
Yeah. All right. Next update. So last week we discussed how the boreal forest, they're the northern cold weather pine forests, were thriving, and it increased in area by nearly 1 million square kilometres in the last 40 years, apparently driven by rising CO2 levels. And that was great. It was an example of how climatic systems adjust. And this is why you'll never get a runaway climate change when you change CO2, because something else will happen that will counter that change. And we know that because it never happened before. So the Earth's climate must be stable between quite narrow limits. Otherwise, it would have run off and become permanently hot or permanently cold over the last who knows how many billion years. So anyhow, here's the latest thought bubble. So given that the boreal forests are increasing in area massively, the idea this week is that we should cut those forests down, drop the logs into rivers, float them down the rivers and out to sea, and then sink them, thus taking CO2 to the bottom of the ocean. Now, a couple of points for this. One, for all the Greens who are listening, do you support this? And if you do, isn't this just another form of logging? So I can't see how the Greens could possibly support this, because this involves cutting trees down. And we know they're not into that. But let's say it really does happen and they do attempt to pull this off. This is a great example of destroying the village to save it. So in order to save the environment, we've got to cut down vast amounts of wild trees.
It just makes no sense. Make it make sense, Bruce. Make it make sense.
It's not meant to make sense.
No, not when money's involved for other people, from not you and I, though.
Now, we know that the Greens are all in favour of destroying the environment to save it, because we've got numerous examples. So on the left, you've got the typical road infrastructure that's required to put a wind factory in. So you take virgin bush and you bulldoze miles and miles of road through it in order to put up your multi-hundred tons of steel and 1,000 tons of concrete turbines. So They don't mind destroying that environment to save some other environment, apparently. And then, of course, there are all the other effects of the turbines with toxic metals, with fires, with visual hazards, etc., etc. So we know that the Greens are hypocrites and they don't mind destroying the environment to save it, because it's not about that. It's about control.
Exactly right, because they're destroying all that environment not for Australia's carbon footprint, because we know that ours is only 1% or even less than 1% of all the so-called global emissions. So we're doing all that. We're ruining our environment for the betterment of trying to make a difference for all the other polluters who are going ahead with building coal-fired power stations and all these other things. But let's just destroy our habitat and destroy our economy while we're at it. And in my state of South Australia, force energy prices sky high and have an irregular grid. So yeah, anyway.
Yeah, well, it's a feature, not a bug, Mark. It's what they want.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like so many other green schemes, the physics of this green scheme don't seem to work either. So I looked up the densities of typical boreal forest trees at the time of cutting. So when they're alive, here are the densities. So here, this is the mass per unit area of typical boreal forest trees. So it ranges from 380 to 970 grams per, I think it's deciliter. So litre, in other words. And so what this means is that none of these things are heavier than water. So the density of fresh water is 1,000 grams per litre, and seawater with the salt in it is more dense. That's why you float more easily in salt water. So when you cut these things down, if you drop them in a river, they'll float down the river, but when they get to the sea, they won't sink.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they'll float in the fresh water, they'll definitely float in the seawater. So that would seem to be a bit of a problem with their scheme to start with, unless, of course, what they're going to do is run a whole lot of roads in there and, chainsaw them down and then load them onto logging trucks and then cart them out to sea. But again, Greens, correct me if I'm wrong, this sounds rather like logging to me, and I'm pretty sure you're against that. And let's face it, it is logging. The only difference is that instead of using it for something useful like making furniture at the end of the process, you're just dumping it in the sea. And again, I'm pretty sure the Greens aren't in favour of dumping stuff in the sea, are they?
Well, Bruce, I reckon they probably weren't in favour of it maybe 20, 30 years ago when they first started off being a conservationist organisation. But their mantra these days is more about instilling socialism and communism into our country than worrying about the environment, as we have clearly seen, as they've clearly shown what they are and aren't supporting.
Reminds me of the meme where you got the Chinese kid asking their parent, why don't we have a green party? And the parent says, we don't need one. We've got communism already.
Yeah, touche, boom tish.
Anyway, I'm obviously no expert on all that sciencey stuff, but I'm just questioning whether the whole scheme would work anyway, even if the Greens would go along with it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's just all these logs floating in the ocean and running into shipping, and cruise ships and all that sort of stuff.
All right, so here's another update. So last week we talked about that Canadian school shooting, which was carried out by what they call a transgender woman. And I remember it was just reported initially that was a woman. And my question marks went up and went, hang on, school shooter is a woman is a very unusual thing. And yeah, as we see, it turned out it wasn't a woman. It was a man playing it being a woman. So that was that. Now, heaven's sake, because this week it's happened again. So this time in the USA, where this transgender shooter pulled out a gun and shot himself and 4 others at a school hockey tournament. Wow. He died and so did 2 of the 4.
Wow.
Now, there's the pictures of this transgender woman. Although I still say I don't know what a transgender woman is. I know what a woman is, unlike most people. and I know what a man is, but this was apparently a transgender woman. And have you noticed that the media relating to this didn't use the word gun person, which the Canadians used? So
gun person.
the US media were very clever because they labelled this transgender woman assailant a shooter,
Okay.
which is a gender neutral term. And I'm going to say at this point, I'm flagging that from this point going forward, to avoid that sort of uncomfortable cognitive dissonance that the Canadian authorities had, I reckon that all mass gun crime in the future is going to be carried out by shooters, not by gunmen or gun persons. I reckon from this point onwards, for neutrality and inclusion reasons, all we're going to see labelled, the label is a shooter, not a gunman or a gun person.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It'll watch this space. Shooter killed ex-wife and son, eh? Oh my gosh. Amazing what chemicals and that will do to your head, won't it?
So we had two examples in consecutive weeks where I would argue mentally unstable person took a gun out and murdered multiple members of society. And at this point, I'm starting to ask myself, rather like the Apollo 13 commander asked himself after there was a loud bang outside his spacecraft, whether we have a problem. So, Houston, do we have a problem? And a cursory glance says, yeah, we actually probably do. Because there's been quite a few of these transgender shooters involved in mass shooting attacks in recent times. In this case, there was a female to male transitioner went into a school and killed 6 people, shot a number of others as well. Note that they did use the correct pronouns here. So female to male was called her, which is good. We had this case in Minneapolis where a male to female transitioner shot up a school, shot 19 actually in the school. They used the word shooter and they avoided the his, her. So they just said trans woman, which, by the way, as far as I know, according to the established rules for these things, no, I'll take that back. This is a trans woman. This is a man who's pretending to be a woman. We had the opposite here in Minneapolis where a female to male transitioner shot a number of people in a school there. Now, this shooter survived. It doesn't say whether this shooter went to a male or a female prison, so that might be a bit of an issue, I would have thought. We had this case also in Colorado where a non-binary shooter killed 5 people at a gay bar. So there seems to be a few mixed messages going on there, but that was the case.
Wow.
And of course, the furry who shot Charlie Kirk was apparently in a transgender relationship at home. So yes, Houston, I think we do have a problem with transgender violence, and I don't just think it's a social contagion. You know, this is a growing phenomenon around, particularly the Western world. It's a real thing, and I think it is exploding so fast that we can't attribute it to some sort of social contagion. I think it's a real thing and it's got a real physical cause. And I wonder, this is just my theory, I wonder whether the rise in transgenderism can be linked to an environmental toxin, and the prime culprits there would be the hormone disruptor herbicides and insecticides, which we're increasingly flooding our environment and our food chain with. So one of these, of course, is glyphosate. Now, glyphosate is a broad spectrum herbicide, so it kills a great variety of weeds. And you might think, well, how's that going to affect humans? Because, you know, plants and people are very different. And in fact, that was the line that was pushed by the Roundup people. You know, well, it's not going to affect you. You're not a plant. But in fact, there's a number of ways it can. One, it's an endocrine disruptor in animals. And the other thing is that it affects your microbiome. So your gut is full of bacteria and other sorts of small bugs, which very much are affected by glyphosate. And we know that in autism, for example, one of the things that goes along with autism is gastrointestinal problems. And the old expression, I had a gut feeling, is called that for a reason. Your gut is full of nerves and it actually does a fair bit of thinking, even though you're not aware of it at a conscious level. So, yeah, I'm wondering whether endocrine disruptors that we're pumping into the environment, and endocrine disruptors means hormone disruptors. That's an easy way of saying it. I'm wondering whether this might be a cause. And I note that Bayer, who make Roundup, glyphosate, have just agreed to settle a $7 billion lawsuit by people who claim they weren't warned that Roundup caused cancer. So Bayer didn't contest whether it caused cancer or not. That was taken as proven. The only question is, okay, how much do they have to pay? So Roundup can certainly cause cancer, despite them denying it early on. And so I can't see why they shouldn't have other effects from the hormone disruptor side that I've talked about. Now, having said that, I was very disappointed during the week to see this. So President Trump has leapt into action to defend the companies that make glyphosate against lawsuits from people who are saying they were harmed by this admittedly harmful product. And this reminded me very much of the vaccine story. So in the 80s, the vaccine manufacturers ran to the US government and said, vaccines are an unavoidably unsafe product. And as a result, we're getting sued so much that we can't afford to keep making them. So the government's response was, well, we will indemnify you. We will stop people suing you, saying they got injured by vaccines, and they'll instead be covered by a US government scheme. Now, just as an aside, isn't it interesting? In the 80s, the vaccine manufacturers ran to government and said, we are making an unavoidably dangerous product, and if we have to pay out for the damage it's causing, we're going to go broke. Now, that ported over now, 40 years later, into safe and effective.
Yeah.
So they have immunity from prosecution on the grounds that their products are unavoidably dangerous, and yet at the same time they're saying that they are safe.
Well, you need to let that sink in. People need to let that sink in.
So I'm sad to see that Trump apparently is going to give the same sort of liability protection to the makers of glyphosate on the grounds that it's essential for national defence. So basically, you can't be sued for your product, dangerous product causing injuries, because it's essential to US national defence. Another big disappointment there, Donald Trump. Big disappointment.
Protecting the big end of town, but I'm not really that surprised either. You know, the beautiful warp speed that he still gloats about. I was there. I did it. I enacted the warp speed. It was because of me that everybody's safe.
Yeah. That's a huge chink in his armor. And the more time goes on, the more disappointed I am with Trump and the Trump administration, with the possible exception of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who I still think the jury is out on.
Yep.
Now, I started off there listing hormone disruptor chemicals that we're pumping into the environment and asking whether, okay, if you're disrupting hormones in plants and insects, maybe we're disrupting them in the sexual orientation of animals and people as well. And here's some other hormone disruptors that are in the environment. So we've got atrazine, which is banned in the EU but is available in Australia and the US. And atrazine, by the way, has been shown to cause reproductive abnormalities in Australian marsupials. So this was a Melbourne University study. So atrazine, which is a hormone disruptor, does affect reproduction in Australian native animals. And here's another class that do that, the neonicotinoid insecticides, example being imidacloprid, which are aimed at small insects, but also, again, in a scientific study, have been shown to alter reproductive behaviour in deer. So it seems to me a reasonable hypothesis, certainly one that should be investigated, is the rise in transgenderism not a mental contagion, but is it rather a toxic effect of something that we are increasingly doing in the environment? And I've just listed 3 or 4 possible examples.
Mm-hmm.
And this, by the way, is one of the reasons why not only am I carnivore, but I rarely eat any vegetables or fruits, even things which on a keto scale would be pretty good for you, like strawberries, blackberries, blueberries. And the reason that I avoid them as well is because they're almost certainly covered in glyphosate as well. Sad.
Very sad. Yeah, this is what they've done. You just have to grow your own, Bruce.
I do, and I grow tomatoes. In fact, out in the orchard there, I've got no fruit. The galar's got every last bit. But I've got cherry tomatoes. I've got some small mutant strawberries about the size of your fingertip. Still tasty, but you know, when you get those ones that, you know, are about that big and occupy about a quarter of the punnet by themselves, you've got to wonder what's being sprayed on those.
Yeah.
And I've got some pumpkins and some watermelon out there.
Oh, good stuff. The old pumpkin. We had a few pumpkins growing in our backyard. They're nice growing your own pumpkin, and they're making some pumpkin soup or baked pumpkin. It's good.
And I might note, all of those things are fruits. They're not vegetables. And we've touched on this before. Vegetables are plants that don't want to be eaten because you're eating part of the structure of a plant, whereas fruits are monkey-attracting parts of plants that are designed to be eaten. You know, pumpkins are yellow and sweet-smelling and tasty because they want you to break it open, cut it, and throw the seeds out. Same with watermelon, same with strawberries, although strawberries you don't throw the seeds out, you eat them, and then they disappear out the other end, along with a little glob of fertilizer to get them going. And of course, tomatoes are fruits as well. And it's a bit hard to get your mind around the fact that watermelon and a pumpkin and a tomato are fruits, not vegetables. But the key thing there is the bit that you're eating, does the plant trying to attract you eat it or not?
What about banana?
Banana is a fruit, and I'm guessing, I mean, modern bananas are nothing like natural bananas, but the seeds in a banana are very tiny, and I would put them in the same category as a strawberry seed. They're designed to survive passage through an animal's GIT, and to get deposited outside, you know, at the other end, along with a little bit of fertilizer to get them going.
Well, there you go.
Now, the big exceptions is the seeds themselves. Plants do not want you eating their seeds, and they defend them with poisons and hard coatings and spikes and so forth. So with a pumpkin, you don't eat the seeds. With a watermelon, you eat them and spit them, or you don't chew them up. You're not grinding them up and making them into bread. You're passing them through, and they survive that.
Yeah. And I think I did mention it on a show once before about when we went to Bali once. We had the coffee that was made from the beans. The beans are given to monkeys, or the monkeys eat them. They ingest them, and then they poop them out. And then they get them out and they clean them, and that's what they make the coffee brew out of. Monkey butt.
That's called civet coffee, and it is a delicacy. And the coffee is actually passed through a native cat called a civet in the tropics. And I like to muse the scene when the first person made civet coffee. So I'm imagining two people. So I've got the rich but bad living slave owner, and the slave. And I can see the rich man getting up after a night on the town. He's got a terrible headache. He feels like crap. And he says to the coffee walla, "Coffee now." And the walla says, "Sorry, boss, the cat's eaten the coffee beans." and the boss going, "I don't care, just make it anyway."
Yeah, that's very funny. That would have happened. It's like, really? Well, you're going to go there? It must be bloody good coffee.
Isn't it a beautiful thing?
Now,
speaking of beautiful things, it's not easy being green again.
Never easy being green, is it?
Now, here's this week's update. So Snowy Hydro 2 was a hydraulic battery project, which was announced by then Prime Minister Turnbull in about 2017 to be finished by 2021 at a cost of $2 billion.
Yeah, and I assert, Bruce, that he actually wasn't a Liberal Prime Minister. He's actually more Labor than he is Liberal. Old mate Turncoat Turnbull.
I'd fit in as a Liberal PM now, maybe not then.
Oh, he would. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah,
He was just ahead of his time, Mark.
He was ahead. He started the Liberals' decline into what they are now, probably. So, but anyway,
he started the rot. So we're talking here about Snowy Hydro 2, which was announced in 2017. So what was the Snowy Hydro project? Well, this diagram tells you. So Snowy Hydro 2 was intended to be a hydraulic battery. So the idea was that they'd run a tunnel between two existing dams in the Snowy Hydro scheme. And these are at different heights. And they would then let water flow from the higher to the lower dam through a generator, which would create electricity. And then at some other time, they would use excess renewable energy, wind, solar, to run the process in reverse and pump the water back up into the higher dam. Now, this is different to how normal hydropower works. So normal hydropower, the water runs through the turbines once and then it goes downstream. And it's replenished by nature, picking that water up, turning it into rain, dropping it in the catchment and putting it back in the dam that way. So hydro is a one-pass thing where the water is collected and moved by nature. Now, the idea for Snowy 2 was different. So we've got to dig this 26-kilometre tunnel to connect the two. And it's got to be a tunnel because it's got to be underground because the terrain where these two dams are is mountainous. So you can't just run pipes across the ground. So you've got to actually tunnel for 26 kilometres. That's the key part of this project. So that was the plan. That was the $2 billion plan. But like so many green projects, the engineering difficulties were much bigger than was initially forecast. And so within 6 months, the cost estimate had almost doubled. So it had gone from $2 billion up to $3.8 billion. By 2019, the estimate was up to $5.1 billion. And by 2023, which is when you and I started taking notice, the cost had blown out to $12 billion. And the completion date had blown out to 2028. Remember, it was supposed to be 2021. And a good deal of the problem, the delay here, was the fact that the tunnel boring machine, our much-loved Florence, got stuck underground for a year, actually, was immobile for a year, after travelling only 850 metres of the required 26 kilometres for the tunnel. Now, Florence apparently is up and running again, but thank you, Mark, for sending me this. But the current estimated cost has now blown out to between $30 and $40 billion. And the completion date is now forecast to be December 2028. So let's call that 2029. So this project is going to be 8 years overdue, and it's going to be 15 to 20 times over budget, even if this is the final cost. Yeah. And like I said, everyone in Australia, stick your hand out or stick your hand in your wallet, pull out $1,000 and burn it, because that's what you're spending on this project.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, of course, that probably only half the people in Australia are actual taxpayers. So, Mark, you and I, we actually got to pull out another $1,000 to pay for the people who aren't paying anything, and we've got to burn that.
Yep.
And remember, this is just one green project, and it may never deliver anything.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
But don't worry, we have the very best experts working on this. So they're planning out the transition of our previously safe and effective power system. Their experts are working to convert that into this new green renewable dream, which reminded me very much of this little clip from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh, now you're going back a bit.
We have top men working on it right now. Who? Top men.
Yep. Yep. The experts, Bruce. We have the experts. Top men. Top men.
Okay.
You got rid of you.
You don't need to see that one. Yeah, that was whatever they suggested next for me. So, yeah, top men are working on this transition for us. There's that word again, by the way. So these top men have presided over a blowout of best part of 8 years and 15 to 20 times as much money. So like up to $40 billion of expenditure is in the hands of these top men. And that, like I say, that is just one project.
Yep. And as I said, Joe, I'm definitely no absolute mouthpiece for One Nation, but the maniacs can only be stopped if One Nation starts to get a bit more of a strong hold in a few seats, and they might really, things might change.
And I'm reminded of what John Cadogan said last week about opportunity cost. And here's a reminder of what opportunity cost is. Opportunity cost is the potential benefits that an individual investor or business misses out on when choosing one alternative over another. So the fact that we're spending $40 billion on this project means that we can't spend $40 billion on something else. And that might be another carbon abatement project. It might be building nuclear reactors, which is a carbon abatement process. It might be building hospitals, aged care, more schools, wider roads, you name it. You can't have that because that money was spent on Florence buried underground.
Yep.
And we may get nothing. They may just abandon this at some point and say, look, it's just never going to work.
Yeah, or it could end up, as Philip mentioned earlier, about $100 billion maybe.
Yeah, 100 billion, that would be, what, 20 billion is, or 30 billion is 1,000 each. That's 3,000 each. Yes.
And like you said, on top of all the other wind factories and solar and all that sort of stuff, I mean, they're talking conservatively $7 to $10 trillion bloody renewable transition. It's just ridiculous.
Yep. And, you know, Snowy Hydro is just about building one generator. Nothing about firming up the unreliable power. Nothing about putting EV chargers all over your suburbs and massively upgrading the electrical infrastructure. Nothing about that. This is just the cost of actually generating the electricity. When guess what? We already had electricity generators. They work really well. We're safe.
Yeah, exactly. Until they blew them up.
Yeah. All right. Next, not easy being green. So you might recall in the past, we've discussed how your full EVs often struggle to meet the range which is quoted on the sticker. And in fact, factoring in cold weather, real world conditions, limitation to how fast you can charge it, not charging over 70 or 80%, not discharging below 20%. In fact, a lot of EVs will struggle to give you half the advertised official range in the real world. Well, it turns out it's the same thing with hybrids, because one of the touted benefits of hybrids is that they reduce your hydrocarbon fuel consumption a lot. And you can tell how much by looking at that little sticker on the window, which will tell you what their fuel consumption in testing is. But here the Guardian reports that the official test numbers for hybrid fuel consumption are widely out as well. And in fact, typically a hybrid's going to use 3 times as much petrol as is claimed on the sticker in real driving.
Who'd have thought?
So it's almost like the official figures are fraudulent, and that our governments and their official agencies are lying to us about important numbers. Is that possible, Mark?
No, surely they're not lying, Bruce. They wouldn't do that to us, would they?
There must be some other explanation.
There has to be.
Now, let's just do a little review here of how hybrids are intended to work. So hybrids, as you know, they have 2 powertrains in them. They've got an electric powertrain and battery, and they've got a conventional combustion engine and battery. And the intent is that the hybrid will save fuel by harvesting electrical energy when the vehicle is either coasting or braking. So the brakes and the engine itself can be used as generators to put electricity back in the battery when you lift off the throttle or brake. So that's called regenerative harvesting. But the thing is, this only works when you've lifted your foot off or are braking. So it's an inner city stop-start traffic benefit. If, like me, you get in your D-Max and drive down to Ballarat, which is over 100 kilometres, the only time you lift off or brake is when you get to Ballarat. I'm not in stop-start traffic. And of course, there's other times I'll drive over to Victoria. I might drive 600 kilometres. And the only times I lift off are at the lights in Horsham and when I get into the outskirts of Adelaide. So again, utterly useless for my real-world driving. I would save no fuel with a hybrid because I'm not doing regenerative braking. Now, here are some of the downsides. So hybrids necessarily weigh hundreds of kilos more than the same vehicle just with a combustion engine because you've got 2 powertrains. So they're heavier, they're more expensive, they use more, they wear the tyres out more, not only because they're heavier, but also because of the way they deliver power. Electric motors deliver rapid onset torque. And if you think about it, if you're dropping burnouts in the street, you're applying a lot of torque to your tyres and you're going to wear them out quickly. Well, EVs go part way to that because they apply the torque, the twisting force more quickly. And then they do it in reverse when you lift off because remember the wheels are running backwards to give you that regenerative electricity. So tyre wear is much higher with a hybrid. Hybrids have a combustion engine which is turning on and off repeatedly. So you're running it on electric, but if you need more oomph, the combustion engine kicks in. Now, that means that you're turning your engine on and off, which means it never gets up to optimum temperature because it's only running part-time, which means it uses more fuel when it is running. It means it wears more because every time you start it, you're doing a 0 oil pressure start. Your starter and your battery are doing a lot more work because the engine is stopping and starting a lot more. And I know this myself because my little Mazda, which I've now moved on, was just a combustion engine car. But it had that stupid, irritating idle stop feature, which Trump has just eliminated from the US. And what that meant is that it had a much stronger starter motor in it and a much bigger battery in it. So that after about 4 years when the battery died, it cost me more than twice as much to replace than it would have if I didn't have the stop-start feature. So it was a couple of $100 more for the battery because my car had a feature that I never used.
Yeah.
And finally, item 4, hybrids have 2 powertrains. So they've got a combustion powertrain and they've got an EV powertrain, which means whatever the fire risk is, you get the fire risk of both. So that's a comparison of hybrids versus conventional vehicles. Now, if they don't really save you any fuel as well as the previous slide suggested, then why the hell are we doing this? It's all cost and no benefit.
Crazy.
Anyway, I don't understand all this sciencey stuff, Mark.
It's just all because it's climate. We got to understand, Bruce, that it's all because of your man-made climate change.
If it saves just one grandma.
Mm-hmm. You know, that's right.
Righto. Health segment. What do we got in the health segment?
Q-Dan.
I'm actually going to invite him aboard, but not for this story. So during the week, SBS rolled out the usual measles scare story, telling us that cases are on the rise. No less than 22 in all of Australia, by the way. Now, if that's not a national emergency, I don't know what is. So measles cases are skyrocketing, apparently. Now, when I was in the military, one of my jobs was a staff job and I had to write briefing notes. And I was told that the structure for a briefing note had 3 parts. First tell us the what, then tell us the so what, and then tell us the now what. It's quite a nice structure, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the what here is we have 22 cases of measles in Australia. That's the what. The so what is between 1 in 10,000 and 1 in 1,000 cases of measles get severe complications. So pneumonia, brain swelling, something life-threatening, you know, maybe take the middle figure, 1 in 5,000 cases leads to severe complications. And as we know from the COVID experience, that's not 1 in 5,000 of healthy kids running around the park. The great majority of kids who get severe complications of measles have probably got severe disease already, cystic fibrosis, mental retardation, cerebral palsy, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't translate across to, you know, healthy kids running around the park. But anyway, that's the so what. The what is we've got 22 cases of measles. The so what is that we have a 1 in 5,000 chance that someone will get seriously sick from it. So what's the now what? The now what is get vaccinated. And in this story, they've quoted the chair of Child and Young Persons Health at Royal Australian College of General Practitioners, Dr Tim Jones, as saying that vaccine hesitancy was the cause.
Oh, really?
So the reason we got 22 cases of measles, the what, is because people aren't getting their vaxes. And in fact, if they did get their vaxes, they'd have a 99% protection. Now, leaving aside the 99%, because that's really got some COVID overlays as well, hasn't it? Let's accept that that is what's really happening. So Dr. Jones said that parents were sceptical about whether the measles vaccination was important, as we say, but that sitting down with families and discussing the risks associated with the disease changed that. So his solution to this vaccine hesitancy was to sit the parents down and tell them what the risks of the disease are. And we've just mentioned them. 1 in 5,000 case of dangerous complications, probably mainly aimed at kids who are already seriously ill. Now, I've got a question for Dr. Jones. So given that you sat the parents down and discussed the risks of the disease, did you discuss the risks of the vaccination? So did you tell them about this study, which showed that your child was 26 more times more likely to die after a measles shot than they were after contracting measles? Did you tell them that?
Well, of course not, Bruce. You wouldn't have told them that. It wouldn't have even come up in the conversation.
Did Dr. Jones tell the parents that infant deaths reported after the MMR injection clustered almost immediately after the shot? So if you looked at infant deaths in the year following an MMR shot, half of them happened in the first week. Did you tell the parents that, Dr. Jones?
Wow.
And are you aware, Dr. Jones, that temporality, in other words, how soon after the effect how soon after the exposure do you get the effect, is a strong indicator of causality. So the fact that half the deaths occurred in the week after it and another half in the rest of the year is a strong tick in the box for temporality, which is a strong indicator that it's a causal relationship, not a random associated. I mean, let's face it, if there was no connection between the vaccine injection and the kid suddenly dying, why would they all cluster in the first week after it?
Yeah.
So, Dr. Jones, did you tell them about the Bradford Hill criteria? Did you tell the parents about the benefits of natural measles infection? And surprisingly, there are some. So this study, for example, which was a large study, Japanese study involving 100,000 people followed for decades, showed that you had less risk of dying of heart attacks and strokes if you'd had natural measles and mumps. And it was about a 10 or 20% lower risk. So I'll read it. Measles and mumps, especially in cases of both infections, were associated with 10 to 20% lower risks of mortality from atherosclerotic coronary vascular disease. So that's heart attacks and strokes. So if that's truly causal, if getting the measles as a kid drops your risk of dying of a heart attack or a stroke by 10%, that's massive. And that's certainly going to extinguish any supposed problem of 1 in 5,000 kids getting a serious issue from measles. So, Dr. Jones, did you talk about the benefits of natural infection?
Yep.
Dr. Jones, did you point out this study which said that natural measles as a child might be protective against cancer in later date? With this study from the UK showing that you had a 50 to 60% lower risk of dying of cancer before age 60 if you'd had measles as a child. Not the measles immunisation, measles the illness. Did you tell them that, Dr. Jones? And a reminder to Dr. Jones, when you're providing information for consent to a patient, and I nearly said when you're giving informed consent, and I hesitated because the doctor doesn't give consent, the patient does. The doctor gives information, the patient decides yes or no. So informed consent has to have the following things. You have to outline the risks of the proposed treatment. So I want to vaccinate you, here are the risks. You want to outline the benefits of the proposed treatment. Okay, the benefits are you'll get less measles. The problem is you might get more cancer and more strokes. And finally, the alternatives. Okay, the alternatives are to respiratory disease, good overall health, a good diet, vitamin D. That's another way you can do it. So all I heard in that story was that the doctor sat the parents down and told them the dangers of the illness. He didn't tell them the benefits of the illness, and he didn't tell them the dangers of the treatment. So I don't think he was adequately informing the patients for them to give informed consent. I think he was instead giving a skewed information set with the aim of convincing them to do something that he'd already decided on. In other words, get vaccinated.
Yes. Well, when you have people that are indoctrinated by the pharma industrial complex, or people that want to push drugs as opposed to be a medical practitioner, and as you've explained plenty of times, especially in that discussion we had with Elizabeth Hart as well about informed consent and really weighing up all the options for your patients. Yeah, and that's why you're on this side of the fence now and not with the cohort that are still pushing what they're doing.
And I bet no one here's even heard ever that there might actually be benefits in having these childhood diseases in childhood. There might actually be benefits, and I've just listed a few of them. Now, those aren't proven. Those are causal associations, and correlation doesn't prove causation. But it's worth considering, isn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe there's benefits. Okay.
No profit in benefits though, Bruce.
No, there's not, are there? All right. Okay, another
No profits in good health benefits for you at any rate, by the way.
Well, they say a patient cured is a customer lost, I think was the...
Yep, pretty much sums it up, my friend. Sums it up.
Okay, so here's another health story. And again, more bad news for the Vaxophiles. And I did say I would invite Dr. Dan to comment. And we haven't seen him for a while. I hope he's all right.
I did see him subscribe to my channel, so I'm waiting for him to chime in at some stage.
Okay, well, I hope he does. I seriously hope he does. All right, so what have we got in this story? So this was in Peter McCullough's site with Nicholas Hulcher, their epidemiologist, reporting that recently released studies showed that the excess mortality that was recorded in Australia in 2021 after the vaccine rollout was almost exclusively attributed to causes other than COVID. So we know that excess mortality, the number of deaths in Australia bumped up between 10 and 20% during the COVID era. I think it's about halfway fallen back to normal, but I also know that they've started adjusting the data in the same way that the bomb does to cover up inconvenient truth. Anyhow, this story says that, okay, during the COVID era, we had this increase in deaths. And these occurred after the vaccine rollout, so in 2021, but in fact before COVID really swept Australia. And you might remember we had that window in 2021 where the vaxxers started at the start of the year, and really there were very few cases until nearly a year later. So the problem here is that we had a lot of extra deaths before COVID really hit Australia, and even taking the official figures, 98% of the excess deaths were not attributed to COVID. And we know that a lot of COVID deaths were died with, not died of. But the problem here is that something caused a massive, unprecedented spike in extra deaths in Australia after the vaccine rollout, and it wasn't COVID that did it. So again, Bradford Hill temporality, the excess deaths spiked after the vax campaign. That's suggestive of a causal link. It certainly wasn't due to COVID. We didn't have extra deaths due to COVID, so it wasn't due to that. All righty.
And no, Facebook's gone for good.
Good to hear.
Not going back. Stuff them.
All right. Slide 51, money and finance, Feb 23, 2026. Not a lot of action this week in the finance department. Precious metals up a little bit. Silver up 11%. Bitcoin roughly flat, and the stock exchange up 1% or 2% as well. Now, it's interesting to me that silver's taken a spike up there, up to 19. In fact, it was up into the 120s today in Australia, because this is Chinese New Year. And that means that the Shanghai Precious Metals Exchange is closed. And that is one of the world's largest, what they call physical exchanges. So Shanghai sells gold and silver that are the real thing. Whereas COMEX, which is the American exchange, sells a lot of paper products that are based on silver but aren't the real thing. And one of the things that's been driving the spike in silver prices is the world is waking up to the fact that it needs physical silver. It needs it for solar panels, for EVs, for missiles, etc., etc. And so if you increase the demand for physical silver, the price goes up, but it may not be reflected in the so-called paper price. Now, at the moment in the world, we don't know what the physical price is because the world's largest physical exchange, Shanghai, is closed for Chinese New Year. So it'll be interesting to see by next week whether the reopening of that has allowed the silver price to spike further. And you might remember I said my prediction for the coming year is that silver would be $200 Australian before Christmas. So let's see.
Yes, watch this space, as they say.
Watch this space indeed. Okay, what are we going to do next? Let me just change my formatting here is getting a bit weird, so let me just change that.
Oh no, technical issues on the Bruce plantation, on the Paix plantation. There's a technical errors.
We shall press on, huh? Okay, so what are we in now? We're in the government overreach section, or govern me harder section. And here's an interesting twist in the sad case of Gus Lamont. Have you been following Gus Lamont at all?
A little bit about that. Yes. Now, apparently wasn't his grandfather, who apparently is identifying as a grandmother.
Because gonna have to give you a strike there.
I knew it was coming.
So yes, so interesting twist in the search for poor old Gus Lamont is that it's now been revealed that his grandmother has been charged with firearms offences, presumably following one of those searches that they've done extensive searches on the property. And the grandmother has reportedly been charged with firearms offences after a silencer was discovered as part of that. Now, SAPOL regards possession of a silencer as a very serious offence, punishable by up to 15 years in prison and a $75,000 fine. Silencers are regarded in the same category as machine guns, grenades and RPGs, by the way. So let's look into that, shall we? So what is a silencer? And why are these regarded as such dangerous weapons? So a silencer is a screw-on canister that you put on the muzzle of a firearm to reduce the amount of noise that's coming out of it. So it's like a muffler on a car engine. It's designed to reduce the noise. Note that it doesn't eliminate the noise. It's nowhere near eliminating the noise. So as an example, if you put a silencer on a 223 rifle, a centerfire rifle, it'll drop the noise at the muzzle from 160 decibels down to 140. Now, 140 decibels is still extremely loud. It's as loud as a jet engine. And that's just on the threshold of hearing damage. So the point of a silencer on a rifle is it lets you reduce the danger posed to the shooter down to a manageable level. So if you shoot a centerfire rifle without ear protection, you're likely to get ear damage. If you shoot a suppressed rifle without ear protection, you're probably not going to get ear damage. But by no means are we making this firearm silent. It's still louder than a jet engine when it goes off. And in fact, if you want to silence a firearm, you've got to do two things. One is you've got to catch a lot of the gases that are escaping the muzzle and slow them down. That's what a muffler in a car does. But the other thing is you have to reduce the speed of the bullet to less than the speed of sound. So if a bullet is traveling faster than the speed of sound, you get a crack, you get a sonic boom, which is nothing to do with the muzzle noise. And when I shoot military rifle and I stand down at the butts, the target end, you can crack 303 bullets over my head at a range of 300 yards, and they go crack, crack. That's the sonic boom. A silencer does nothing to that. So to make a rifle silent, you'd have to start with a bullet that's going less than the speed of sound. So you'd have to reduce the speed of the bullet by about 3 times, which means you'd have to reduce the energy of the bullet by about 10 times. So it's not practical to have a silent rifle, and a silencer won't do it. So it's a misnomer. To call a silencer, particularly a rifle, is garbage. All they do is reduce the noise level to something where it's probably not going to give you hearing damage.
So all
So-
the stuff that they carry on in the movies where they're walking around the house with a silenced gun, you know, to mask that they're actually going around killing people, or you got the sniper on top of the hill that's, you know, silently trying to snipe people and assassinate them with no sound is all BS, mate.
It's all BS. Nevertheless, why are silencers illegal in Australia? Why are they regarded as dangerous as machine guns? When, after all, they're just inert tubes. They're just a bit of pipe with some baffles in them. Probably because the police have deemed them so. And the shooting of a police commissioner in Australia a couple of decades ago with a silenced pistol probably coloured their view. I think that was in Canberra, but I'm not 100% sure. And that's a pistol. It's a low-powered weapon with a slow bullet. So even if you ban silencers on pistols, which after all are highly controlled anyway, it's not the same thing as banning silencers on rifles, because there's no such thing as a silencer for a rifle. Nevertheless, the police get anxious if people can reduce the noise coming out of their firearms, so they're tightly controlled and pretty much impossible to get. Now, this is batshit crazy and stupid, and if this were any other industrial process, we would go the opposite. If this was a machine that was putting out 160 decibels, it wouldn't be good enough just to say, oh, well, wear earmuffs when you're using it. In industry, the noise output of that would have to be reduced. It's no different with rifles, but for some reason, instead of doing the sensible thing, which was altering the product to make it less dangerous to your hearing, they're instead saying, no, you can't do that. If you want ear protection, you've got to wear earmuffs. Now, earmuffs don't protect anyone else that's nearby. They don't protect you if they slip off or if the recoil hits them and lifts them out. So it's a stupid, stupid idea in Australia to ban reduction of noise coming out of rifles. And in fact, in many parts of the world, it's the opposite is true. In England, for example, if you want to shoot at a rifle club, in the very least, it is the height of bad manners to not suppress it. And in many cases, you'll be required to have a suppressor or you can't shoot your gun at the range. In Australia, it's the opposite. They're banned.
Crazy, man. We're a bit backward. They always say we're a bit upside down. So blowguns are banned too, Jace. So blowguns.
Blowguns, star knives, crossbows, etc., etc.
Well, the only things I used to do is, you know, the old spitballs in the pen. You take the middle out of the pen and you spitball in the back of the bus, and you'd shoot people at the front of the bus with the spitballs.
Yeah, a little bit of paper in the girl's head. Yep.
Remember those days.
Anyway, I'm just pointing out the idiocy there of not allowing a noise reducer on a very noisy piece of equipment when other parts of the world regard it as not only a good idea but essential. It's just stupid what we do here.
Yep.
But there is another twist to the story, and I gazumpstriked you for this. Because I noticed in the story that they said that missing Gus Lamont's grandparent, Josie Murray, has been charged with possession of a silencer. And the word grandparent just seemed a bit odd there, because surely Josie Murray would be the grandmother, right? So the fact that they've chosen not to say grandmother struck me as odd. And apparently Josie was assigned Robert at birth. And we all know how wrong that can be. And Josie is reportedly actually Gus's grandfather, but transitioned, there's that word again, some 20 or so years ago. Okay, so why might this be relevant? Well, one of the theories the police are working on is foul play here. Now, we've just established that a silencer is a very dangerous weapon. We've established that there's a growing trend of killings due to transgender people. And we've established that Robert, now Josie Murray, is a transgender person who possessed a silencer. So they might be things that are worthy of consideration, I would have thought.
As cops stressed again, it was unrelated to the 4-year-old's disappearance. Of course they'd say that.
Well, is it? Is it? We've just raised some questions.
Yeah.
All right.
Those questions.
Now we're going to finish up with the old Uslam. And this Uslam comes from Bangladesh, where apparently climate change has worked out yet another way to kill humans, and that's by way of tiger attack. And this story says that tiger attacks in Bengal are rising due to climate change. So to quote the story, in 2022, my husband, Sudipto Sarkar, went to catch fish and crabs but never returned. He was killed by a tiger. The situation has been exacerbated in recent years amid rising instances of human-tiger conflict, primarily due to the adverse effects of climate change.
Of course it is.
Now, one of the commenters on the story said, why not take a gun with you? And if you want to make that a really dangerous gun, why not leave the gun at home, just take a silencer with you? Because they're as dangerous as a machine gun, apparently.
Yeah, apparently, if you live in Australia, that is.
Well, that's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing.
Or could it be that there's more Bengalis around these days that are coming into contact with the tigers? Like, what do they call the people that live in Bengal? Bengalese? Bengalis?
They're Bangladeshis.
Oh, of course, Bangladeshis. There you go. Well, maybe there's more Bangladeshis. Maybe the birth rate of the Bangladeshis have increased, and there's more frequency of meeting a Bengal tiger, Bruce. I don't know. Just putting it out there. I don't know if
there's a shed load of Bangladeshis. I happen to know that.
Well, their birth rates are obviously better than Australians.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, well, there's a reason for that. We're definitely losing it. We're definitely losing it.
And that's us for the week. That's a short one. Look at that. What's that?
1 hour 42. Jeez, mate.
I've got one more coat to put on the gutters. I could whip out and do that.
And I even fluffed it out a bit at the beginning this week again, Bruce. You know, I had some things there. I was actually going to play a bit of a longer clip, but I thought, no, I'll hold off because, you know, I don't want to make it too long. But anyway, never mind. But I thought, like, you're a bit of a history buff, and I've got this little, I have my Bible out, and in the front of my Bible, I've got this little bit of a timeline of things. And there was a couple of things that come up there, and you know how we got, you know, wharf strikes, or we've labor strikes over the years, you know, the union strikes and that. As a historian, Bruce, when do you reckon the first labor strike was? Do you have an idea?
Well, no, but it must have been pretty early.
It was around Pharaoh Ramesses III in Deir el Medina. The first recorded labor strike in history occurred around 1152 BCE. So BCE. That's a long time.
Hang on. I've got to pull you up there. This BCE bullshit. What's that?
before Common Era, they reckon. BC it is, before Christ. So they want to say before.
You should know it's before Christ. Why are you using these woke words?
I was reading, and I should give myself an uppercut. Thanks for pulling me up on that. Workers protested at various temples, demanding delayed grain rations, which served as their wages. The strikes highlighted economic crisis and weakened state authority. Bruce, how about that? Well, there you go, all the way back there on Ramesses III. And the other thing, you're an anaesthetist, you're in the medical field. When do you reckon the first false teeth came about, Bruce?
Well, we know that George Washington had wooden teeth, so it was before that. And I'm going to guess it was well before that, somewhere around 1 BCE, perhaps.
BC, maybe.
You're learning.
How about it come out of? Well, Italy is where it come out of, and the earliest known false teeth were created around 700 BC by the Etruscan civilization in northern Italy. These ancient prosthetics consisted of human or animal teeth, such as from an ox, fastened together with gold bands and wire to replace missing teeth. So there you go. There's a bit of a history lesson there. I thought we might do a little bit more of that and maybe throw some things in just to, make it a little bit, but break it up a little bit.
I'm going to go for some of those tiger teeth, I think.
Yeah. Well, I guess you had more reason to get your teeth knocked out back in those days, I'd imagine. There was probably a bit more of that. But anyway, thank you.
On the other hand, I think a lot of dental illness, a lot of dental disease is inflammatory, inflammatory gum disease. And a big contributor to that is changing the bacterial load of your mouth by putting carbohydrates in it, which let sugar loving bacteria live there, which secrete acids which rot your teeth. So I rather suspect that your carnivores probably didn't suffer from much in the way of tooth decay.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah, very likely. Righto, legend. Well, you get out there to your GGs. I haven't heard them whinnying there for their dad. I've seen the pussycats jumping up and down. But anyway, thank you again, my friend, for sharing and enjoy a little bit of sunlight while it's still about. And thank you, everybody, for joining us as usual. Great to see all those comments keep coming down, even though we've lost Facebook, which is okay, but we still seem to be attracting enough of you there to come and see what Bruce has got to bring us each week. So thank you, Master Bruce. Much appreciated as always, my dear brother. And we'll see you soon.
Good. Oh,
did you really want to knock me off?
I'm playing with my screen. What you and the viewers can't see, Mark, is that I'm actually trying to give the last half of this show with a screen about the size of a postage stamp, because the screen has reorganized itself out of this tiny little thing, such that I could barely see the slides, and I certainly couldn't see any of the text.
Yeah, you need to get yourself a dual screen or something. Maybe I should send you. Maybe I'll send you over. Maybe I'll get you a gift or another screen. I'll get you a wide screen, and
I can't work under these conditions, Mark.
No. How about I sort something out for you? You can maybe reset yourself up, and you won't know yourself.
Well, I reckon just wait a bit, because it's a formatting thing which has never happened before. But yeah, and every time I tried to increase it, it just got smaller, and I had to give up in the end.
That's right. Yeah, see, Gail said this too, Bruce. Look, it could have been an increase in population and the reduction in food for tigers, and the person was fishing. There we go. Yeah. Anyway, good on you guys. Thank you. God bless, and we'll do it all again next week.
To fight again for that already burned, he was driven towards the flames. All the signs are there for all to see, the signs we've lost our way. When we jail our heroes and applaud our villains and turn our hearts away, like a silent choir, too scared to sing the anthem of a braver day. A song our children may never hear, the ballad of Dr. Bruce Paix. A song our children may never hear, the ballad of Dr. Bruce Paix.